Kant is one of the most renowned philosophers in the history of Western philosophy. His ethical philosophy is particularly noteworthy, and the concept of the categorical imperative remains one of his most influential contributions. In essence, the categorical imperative is a principle of moral reasoning that Kant believed could form the basis for universal ethical principles. This article will explore the categorical imperative in detail, explaining its various aspects and implications. To understand the categorical imperative, it is essential to first examine Kant's broader ethical philosophy. Kant believed that the ultimate source of moral value was human dignity. This dignity, he believed, was rooted in human rationality, which distinguished humans from other animals and enabled them to make moral decisions. Kant argued that the only actions that had moral worth were those that were done from a sense of duty, rather than from self-interest or any other external motive. With this in mind, Kant sought to develop a universal principle that could guide moral decision-making. The categorical imperative is the result of this effort. In essence, the categorical imperative is a command that applies to all rational beings, regardless of their individual circumstances. It is not based on any particular goals or desires, but rather on the inherent worth of rational beings themselves. Kant believed that there were several different formulations of the categorical imperative. The most famous of these is the first formulation, which states that individuals should act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. This means that individuals should only act in ways that they would want everyone else to act in similar circumstances. If a particular action cannot be generalized to all people, then it is not ethical. For example, consider the act of lying. If someone were to lie in order to achieve a particular goal, they would be acting on a maxim that says lying is acceptable when it serves my interests. However, if this maxim were to become a universal law, then lying would become the norm, and trust between individuals would break down. Therefore, Kant argues, lying is never ethical, even in situations where it might seem like the most expedient course of action. Kant's second formulation of the categorical imperative is perhaps less well-known, but is no less important. This formulation states that individuals should act so that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in that of another, always as an end and never merely as a means. This means that individuals should respect the dignity of other human beings and avoid actions that treat them as mere objects to be used for our own purposes. To understand this principle, consider the example of a salesperson who manipulates a customer into buying a product they don't need, purely in order to make a commission. This action treats the customer as a means to an end, the salesperson's commission, rather than as an end in themselves. Kant would argue that this is not ethical, as it violates the dignity of the customer as a rational being. There are several other formulations of the categorical imperative that Kant proposed, but these two are the most well-known and widely discussed. It is worth noting, however, that the categorical imperative is not without its critics. Some have argued that it is overly rigid and inflexible, and that it does not take into account the complexities of real-world moral decision-making. Others have criticized it for being too individualistic and for failing to take into account the broader social and political context in which moral decisions are made. Despite these criticisms, the categorical imperative remains an important and influential concept in ethical philosophy. Its emphasis on universal principles and respect for the dignity of all rational beings continues to inspire ethical thinking and debate to this day. As such, it is an essential concept for anyone interested in moral philosophy or ethical decision-making.